All right, what's going on? Travis here coming at you. Welcome to video number 2, Fuel 1-to-1. In this video, I'm going to be digging into quantity. All right, in the first video, I discussed the totem pole of fuel. So what matters most with your fuel, your nutrition, what's going to make the most difference. And to recap, at the top, we had quantity. All right, and so that's what I'm going to cover right now, is I'm going to cover quantity. Second, we had quality, then we had timing, and then we had supplements, right? Supplements at the very bottom, right? And so with quantity being so important and the biggest needle mover, so to speak, that's what I'm going to dig in today. And so we're thinking about quantity here. So what do I mean by quantity? Well, the amount of food that you take in, right? And so we got energy in, energy out, right? And so you're either going to be in a surplus, you're going to be in a deficit, or you'll basically be kind of in a maintenance. So you're taking in just enough, kind of going into surplus, deficit, but you kind of level out so you don't lose any weight, you don't gain any weight. If you're in a surplus, you're gaining weight, right? If you're in a deficit, you might not be losing weight, but it just all depends, right? And so your energy here is broken down into your calories, right? So calories are macros. The easiest way to think about it, your calories are your macros. Your macros make up your total calories, but macros are broken down into 3 key ones that I'm going to cover here. So we got protein, fats, and carbs. You can add alcohol in there, you can add fiber, all this different stuff, but these are the key ones, right, that we want to cover to keep it as simple as possible. So the first one, protein. Protein is the most important macronutrient that you need to be focusing in on, right? The reason for that is protein is very, very expensive in the body. So when you take in protein, it requires a bunch of extra energy for your body to break down protein, right? And so what does that do for you? Well, it helps speed up the metabolism, all right? We want our metabolism running fairly at a high level, but we want it to run efficiently, and we want it to constantly be running all the time, right? So people that don't take in a lot of protein, their metabolism drops down. And so a couple key principles with your protein is have it in every single meal. Eat protein in every single meal. Make it a rule to have protein in every single meal. And just simply build your meals around protein. And again, the reason for that is it's going to help boost the metabolism a little bit. And it's going to be expensive for the body. And so you're going to waste calories on your body breaking down protein. That's a good thing, right? Secondly, we want to make sure that we're getting in the minimum amount of protein. So how much is that? I've seen 0.7 on the lowest end. Typically, I go with 0.8, but I've seen all the way up till 1.5, even 2 grams per pound of body weight, depending on the goal, right? And so if you're at a healthy weight, feeling good, and you're just looking to maintain, at least get in 0.7 or 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, right? Or I say the highest is like 1.2, which is the highest that I typically prescribe, unless I have a really hard gainer that's doing a lot of training that requires more protein. We're going to go up a little bit higher. 1.5, I've never gone beyond 1.5, to be honest with you, prescription-wise. But that's a wide spectrum right there, right? So what works best for you? Well, the first thing I would recommend with this whole quantity thing, and I noted this in the first video, your first task is to track intake. And I'll get back to this here in a second. But the reason you track your intake is because we got to know where we're at with quantity. I say quantity, but you can't just guess. Can't just be like, oh, yeah, I think I'm eating pretty good and I'm eating enough food. I feel like it. We don't know unless we know the actual numbers. The numbers are the facts. The facts are the truth, right? And so when we know the truth, we can change and tweak what we know. What gets measured accurately, we can change and tweak accordingly, right? And so back to protein here. protein being so important, we need to have it in every meal, at least 0.7 up to 0.5. Now, in addition to all those other key points, why is protein so important? Well, maintain muscle mass and build muscle mass, all right? And so whether your goal is to get stronger, build muscle, or it's to shred fat, protein is like the savior, because if you're trying to build muscle, we need to make sure we're getting in enough protein to actually, create protein synthesis and build muscle and all that type of stuff. On the same side of things, if we're trying to lose weight, get shredded, we want to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. So we don't want to lose muscle. We just want to lose body fat. And so we need to make sure that our muscles are properly nourished with enough protein to keep that from happening, okay? And so protein is very, very important. Now, fat, on the other hand, fat has always been kind of painted, protein has always been painted as like the good macro, and then fats and carbs, depending on what you've read, what you've seen, out in the world, fats are either the enemy or they're super good, or carbs are the enemy or they're super good, whatever, right? And the thing is, it depends. It depends. How much fat should you be taking in? It depends on your goals, on how you train, on your current state of your body, how healthy you are, all this stuff. But the biggest thing that you need to know about fat is, yes, we do need fat. We need fat to survive. We need fat to run efficiently. And we need fat to optimally optimize hormones. All of the different stuff that's happening in the body, we need to have an ample amount of fat in the body to help optimize hormonal recovery, hormonal operations, all right? So when people go so low on fat intake for so long, they start to mess up their hormones. And you start to mess up, the CNS and what's going on with that. And so that, in turn, that can run you down into the ground, okay? And so fats should constantly be manipulated depending on your goal. Again, this all depends on your goal. This stuff goes well below the surface, but all you need to know is we need to take in a specific amount of fat. Typically, it's going to range anywhere from about 25% of your total energy intake or your caloric intake, all the way up to like 70% if you're doing, keto or something to that nature, right? And again, keto, nothing against keto. The big thing that I have against keto is the way it's marketed, right? It's marketed as a quick fix, as, a savior of all diets. If you just do that, then you're going to get instant results, right? And so don't believe the hype. Basically, you got to use it for what it is. And if your goals align with it, if your lifestyle aligns with it, then it can definitely work for you. If not, it's not going to work for you. So just don't think that it's the one-all, end-all, fix to everything, right? But either way, ranging anywhere from like 25% to 70% for your fats. Now carbs are the interesting thing here in regards to intake, because it typically depends on your proteins and your fats. And so I usually don't prescribe a certain amount of carbs to a person until we've gotten their protein figured out and we've gotten their fat figured out, right? And so carbs usually kind of fill the gap after we've gotten these two taken care of. And so we get the minimum amount of protein that we need, maybe a little bit more. We set the fat, 25%, 70%, whatever. Those are going to give us specific intakes. And then whatever's left of our total intake of what we need specifically for this person, we're going to fill the gaps there. Now, looking at the spectrum on this, carbs, it depends on your specific lifestyle, your specific goals. And so I'll say this: if you're after performance, if you're after building muscle, if you're after just having more energy, carbs are going to be on a higher end, right? Carbs are going to be on a higher end, because when I talk about carbs, I'm talking about like starchier carbs. So white rice, sweet potatoes, quinoa, even grains, right? To fuel the body for performance, for muscle contraction, right? Those types of carbs are stored in the body, in muscle, as glycogen. And then glycogen is burned off as energy, right? And so we need to make sure that our body has enough of this glycogen to push it in accordance to our specific goals. And so if performance, muscle gain, higher energy type stuff is your goal, then your carbs are going to be a little bit higher. Now on the other end of things, and this is all dependent on who you are, where your body's at, how your metabolism is, your carbs might be a little bit lower, right? And so if your goal is more lifestyle and you're just wanting to get healthier, you're looking to optimize your hormones and fix all this stuff that's going on under the hood, you might drop your carbs way down to control insulin, have your fats higher, have your proteins where they need to be, and then you're doing more of a keto approach. But you got to understand, if you're doing keto, that's not going to push performance. That's not going to push muscle building and all that different stuff, right? It's going to push more so like just healthier living. It'll push fat loss too. But again, that's where it all depends, right? On the other thing, if you're in a well-conditioned state, your metabolism is working good, you can lower your carbs down and you can go into like a fat shredding phase. And so protein is going to be a little bit higher, fats are going to be a little bit more moderate, carbs are going to be a little bit lower. That's because your overall intake of energy is going to be lower because you're shredding fat. And so it just depends where you line up on that spectrum, right? But either way, the important thing that you need to know about carbs are the energy macro, right? They are not the enemy. They are not the thing that causes us to be fat. They are not the thing that causes us to, whatever. They're not the devil, but they're used in accordance to specific goals, right? And so when you understand about all the different macros, then you have a better idea of how they make up our energy, right? And so from there, going back to you tracking your intake, that's the number one key with quantity is we need to figure out where you're at right now. We need to figure out how much you're actually taking in. And so tracking your intake through MyFitnessPal or some sort of app, but actually weighing and measuring your food accurately is a key to your success, because we need to find out where you are at right now. That's point A, right? And so you start tracking your intake, because point B over here, this is going to be what some formula kicks out, right? So for example, you go to MyFitnessPal right now, you put in all your numbers, it's going to give you specific targets, proteins, carbs, fats, right? But that's just based off of general information. We don't know the specifics of you, like how's your sleep? How's your hunger right now? How's the actual, health of your metabolism right now? How's your life outside of the gym? Are you stressed? Constantly stressed? That's going to change these numbers, right? And what it's also going to change these numbers is what your current intake is. So you figure out where you're at point A, you calculate up your numbers over here using a calculator, point B, you're going to have quite a bit of a difference. Typically, you're going to have quite a bit of a difference. And so what do you do quantity-wise? Well, this is where you got to come up with a point C, and you got to kind of meet in the middle dependent on your goals. And so this is where you make different changes, modifications based off of you. And that's, again, like where there are really no templates that are going to help you out here. You need to figure out where you're at. You need to put in a little bit of legwork to understand where you need to go. And so point C is then created, and then this gives you your actual numbers. Those are your starting targets. That's where you start, and then you start building off that. And so the amount of protein that you take in, the amount of fats, the amount of carbs, and that's where you go. Depending on your goal, where do you need to go? Surplus, deficit, maintenance, whatever. You need to figure out where you're at, point A. Then we can start directing the ship, so to speak, to get to the next level. So hopefully that makes sense. And that covers the quantity section of this. In the next piece, I will talk about quality, timing, and I'll go into the deeper details on those two pieces. And then in the final video, I'll actually discuss supplements, different ins and outs with supplements that I recommend taking, supplements that really aren't worth shit, and to give you kind of clarity around that. But the key is, again, you got to get the quantity down first. Quality comes second. Timing is important. Once we get those two top things done, and then supplements, we can add those in to accelerate our results, but they're not going to take care of our results, right? We got to have the bigger pieces in check. So Hope you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment and let me know what you thought. If you got any other questions, let me know as well. I'll see you in the next video.